Before we jump into this podcast, let's just have a first word from our sponsors, NordVPN, the fastest VPN in the world and an absolute essential travelling companion. You can use NordVPN on 10 devices with just one account, easily switching your virtual location to access apps and websites in other countries. But if you're out of the country, make sure that you've got NordVPN to be able to use your subscriptions and watch the live sport that you might miss. If you're at home, use it to see if you can save money with products that might be cheaper in another region. Go to nordvpn.com/Manchester to get 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. The link is also in the podcast description. Hello and welcome to the Manchester is Red podcast. My name is Steven Railston. We're recording this episode a little bit later. It's a Wednesday afternoon, so a few days after United's 2-0 win against Sunderland in the Premier League. I'm joined by David McDonnell. David, a good start for me on this podcast this morning because last Friday I was probably a little bit drunk, never mind hungover on the podcast, but I'm fresh, I'm raring to go, excited.
Yeah, well, this is a more civilised time than 9 a.m. for the last podcast. But you actually made more sense and you're more coherent, hungover than you normally are. So maybe there's a kind of lesson there,
So you're saying I should do a George Best and turn up to work?
Exactly, yeah, work for George.
After six cans of lager each morning.
But I didn't know it was a free bar there as well, and it was a work. Well, it was a work do. So you're winning on both fronts there. It's in the line of duty. So.
Yeah, I think United have very kindly put a little bit of money for staff behind the bar for the first hour or so. But as you can imagine, it wouldn't have lasted very long with thirsty journalists turning up to the event.
But you can't turn down a free bar.
You can't turn down a free bar. Well, you did, ironically, didn't you? You weren't there.
Yes, I did. I had childcare issues, unfortunately, but I would have been there. I was there in spirit anyway.
Yeah. Right. I hope you can actually remember what happened at the weekend because, like I say, we're recording this episode later than we usually would. You were off on Monday, I was off on Tuesday, so hence recording on Wednesday afternoon. Another really important, I say another because the Chelsea win was important. There was obviously a setback against Brentford, but another important win for Ruben Amorim because the pressure had increased after that defeat against Brentford. That was another significant setback. We discussed the need to enter the October international break with a win.
Yeah.
They secured the 3 points. Sunderland made a decent start to the game in the first few minutes, but I think they were pretty pants after that. But credit to United, who were very good. They were very direct. We'll discuss that kind of change in approach as well on the podcast. But I thought we'd start with Sen Lommans, who was thrown in. Finally got his debut. We've been waiting to see him since his 18.2 million signing from Royal Antwerp. We finally saw him from the start, and he made such a difference, didn't he, David? I think the confidence that he transmitted through the team was really notable. He made a few good saves, and there was a moment, wasn't there? Was it the end of the first half?
He came and caught the ball.
And he came and caught the ball.
It's a routine cross.
And Old Trafford reacted as if someone had scored a goal.
Yeah,
I mean, the bar is low for Lommans to impress, isn't it? But it was a good debut.
Yeah, it was, Steve. And I think it says everything about how poor United have been in the goalkeeping department since David De Gea left. And of course, I know David had his critics about his distribution, but he was a great servant to Manchester United. You don't get the number of appearances that he's had and keep the number one spot for that long without being a quality goalkeeper. But it says everything about how bad the situation's got with Andre Onana over the last couple of years that fans were cheering, as you say, for a goalkeeper who catches a routine cross as if they just scored a last-minute winner. I think it was the right move to put him in. I think it was probably the right move to ease him in gently in terms of training and into the new environment. But I think now, after that assured display, he's got the jersey, he's got the shirt. He was confident, he commanded his area. And, when was the last time we could say that about a Manchester United goalkeeper? And, of course, he made a great save at the end. It was 2-0, but the game was effectively won. But I think it was the 94th or 5th minute. But he made a great save. So he was alert right to the end. He was focused. And I think, as you say, that kind of transmits confidence to not just the defence, but the entire team. So I think it was a really competent debut, and he will certainly keep his place for the Liverpool game, and that's something for Manchester United and Ruben Amorim and Lommans himself to build on.
Altay Bayindir had continued to start games despite Lommans coming in. I kind of thought myself I would have thrown him in straight away. Now that he has made his debut, you can see the logic in it. And Ruben Amorim explained in his post-match press conference why he did it. He said, different country, didn't he? Different ball. Managers love to talk about these different balls.
Arteta likes to talk about the ball, doesn't he?
So I'm not sure Amorim should go down that avenue because I don't really like managers talking about the balls.
Not a wise move.
A ball's a ball, isn't it? But yeah, really, really positive debut. And I think it was telling at full time that as soon as the final whistle went, De Ligt sprinted across. I say sprinted, he probably jogged across. Luke Shaw went across to Lomans, Ahmad, Harry Maguire as well. And they made a real effort to congratulate him and hug him, and it showed the appreciation they had for that first appearance.
Yeah, and the camaraderie between them. I mean, he's a very young goalkeeper, let's not forget. I know David De Gea was 19 or 20 when he came, which was even younger. I think Lomans is 23.
23, yeah.
Yeah, but I did a piece this week about him, yesterday I think it was, and speaking to people at United about how he settled in, just getting a feel of what he's been like behind the scenes, and everyone at the club has been struck by how mature he is for his age. He takes everything in his stride. He's very level-headed. And I think you saw that certainly in his performance, but I think you also saw that in the interview he gave to Club Media when he signed. He talks about his parents being very calm and collected, and he gets a lot of that demeanour from them. He also talked about jotting down, after games, he has a kind of notebook or a kind of dossier where he jots down one word to trigger sort of things that he's learnt in the game, that kind of stuff. So he's really diligent as a goalkeeper. He does his homework, and I think that's been reflected in his performance on Saturday. And as you say, Steve, the way the players reacted at the end showed they have a lot of faith in him. They were keen to let him know how much he was appreciated and how much confidence, as we say, he transmitted to them. So I think it was a very, very competent debut. And something, as I say, for the club to build on, definitely, and the team to build on.
We can't really praise him enough, but having said that, the bar is pretty low, isn't it? I think United fans have been forced to watch Andre Onana and Altay Bayindir, who are both error-prone goalkeepers. Yeah. And there was obviously some good moments with Onana. I've covered it extensively for myself, and I think he actually did have a good kind of calendar year up to a certain point, and things kind of turned sour again. So there was flashes for Onana. There was kind of moments where you thought he would become the keeper that we thought he was going to become. Yeah. But unfortunately, he just could not cut out those errors, which ended his time at the football club. And then Bayindir has been very unconvincing as well. So to go from a goalkeeper in David De Gea, who was wonderful, a fantastic servant, a great goalkeeper. Okay, the last 2 seasons, he obviously regressed, but his overall time at the club, he was fantastic. To go to Bayindir and Onana was disappointing. And you need a good goalkeeper, don't you? It is for me, along with striker, of course. Those 2 positions are the most important positions on the pitch. And Lomans, and then at the other end, Sesko, we'll come on to in a moment. But if you can get those areas right, as you made the point on another podcast, football's a pretty simple game if you get those positions right.
The basics, yeah. I think it's interesting as well when you look at the goalkeeping situation at Manchester United. I don't think it's any secret that Ruben Amorim wanted Emi Martinez from Aston Villa. United, for whatever reason, wages, the size of the fee, there was some suggestion that Jadon Sancho wouldn't join Villa on a permanent deal, and United needed that to happen in order to afford the financial wriggle room to afford Martinez. So they've gone down a different route now with Lomans, as opposed to a World Cup winner in Martinez, someone who's the wrong side of 30, who's experienced, who wouldn't necessarily be there for the long haul, maybe a few years. But Lomans is at the other end of his career, obviously just starting out. I think last season was his first full season with Royal Antwerp as their number 1. So he had a meteoric rise in that respect. So it was interesting that Amorim wanted Martinez. That deal couldn't get done. They've gone with Lomans. And the early signs are that it will pay off. As you say, Onana was capable of some brilliant shot stopping, some brilliant saves. But you always felt he had a major error in him, more than one in a game on certain occasions. There were some real high-profile gaffes, particularly in the Champions League as well. And I just think that we talked about the confidence that Lomans has transmitted to his defenders. Conversely, if you've got a goalkeeper who's got a error in him or is going to throw one in the back of the net at any given time, you're on edge as a defender. You can't, not I'm going to say relax, but you can't be confident that the guy behind you is going to keep the ball out of the net. So that puts you on edge. I think with Lomans, you sense the players and the fans as well. Felt that security of him. And I think someone said he looks like a goalkeeper, which is a bit of a bizarre thing to say.
Looks a bit like me at the moment, actually. I've not had a haircut. I'm due on Friday for a haircut.
You've gone for the Lomans.
It's longer than me, yeah. I've gone for the Lomans, I've said that, yeah.
But someone said, I can't remember where it was where I heard it, but said he looks like a goalkeeper, which I thought was actually bizarre, but actually right. He's got that aura about him, and all great goalkeepers have that aura, and he seems to command the area, as we said, and just looks the part. And, obviously, there's a lot of technical ability that goes with being a good goalkeeper, a lot of, stamina, a lot of fitness, a lot of agility, everything. But I mean, to actually have that aura about you, and I felt, listen, there are going to be times when he makes mistakes. He's a young goalkeeper. He's going to regress. He's going to have moments where things don't go his way. It's not going to be a completely upward trajectory. But I just felt on Saturday he sort of looked like Old Trafford didn't faze him at all, and whereas it has done with a lot of other players and goalkeepers in the past, or in the recent past. So I feel that he maybe has the character and the demeanour and the mentality to succeed at Manchester United.
I actually think he looks very normal. I think he looks unremarkable. He looks like someone you could just cross on the street. Not that we should be picking on players' appearances or how they look on this podcast.
Well, it does, but
that's not our jobs. But when he came onto the pitch, there was an air of confidence about it, and he commanded his area straight away. And I wasn't particularly sure we'd get that, but I was really impressed by it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're right. He looks like a normal kind of guy, a regular kind of guy. And I think, again, speaking to people who you see him on a daily basis and work with them at United at the training ground, he has that kind of character. He just is a regular guy, very down to earth, very level-headed, calm, very, very, nothing seems to faze him. And I guess those are the traits as well you want as a goalkeeper. You want to be calm as personified, if you like. So I think he's certainly got the right mental approach to be a goalkeeper at this club, because as we've seen in the past, and as I just said, it has proven too big. The pressure has been too big for some people. And Ruben said that, reading between the lines, when he was asked about why Andre Onana didn't succeed at United, and he's only gone on loan, but he said sometimes the pressure is too much. Sometimes the pressure can build, and you need a change. You need to be taken out of that situation. And Onana's been a great goalkeeper at Ajax, at Inter Milan. Obviously reached the Champions League final with Inter against Manchester City. So he's played at the top level, but sometimes it just doesn't work. And it was the right decision to change goalkeeper, and it'll be interesting to see how Lomond's progresses, because I think he has a really, really bright future.
It's interesting you mentioned obviously Emi Martinez, because in the summer he was considered. I think the messaging coming from the club was Lomond's was first choice, but obviously Martinez was heavily considered as well.
Yeah.
That was my understanding of the situation, and obviously Lomond's came in on deadline day. There was a lot more upside to Lomond's than there was Martinez. I think Martinez would have hit the ground running. He certainly wouldn't have started on the bench in the Manchester derby, which Lomond's did, and BND continued, and he would have made more of an immediate impact. But long term, and if you're taking a view in 2-3 years' time, then clearly Lomond's was probably the better choice. Hopefully he can really build on that debut, because it's a great place to start. And one thing that I will say, Fabrizio Romano, who posted a lot of stuff about Emi Martinez in the summer.
Yeah.
I need to say this. I need to get this off my chest.
It's
been weighing us down each night.
Yep.
He was referencing him as Dibu for some reason. I don't know if you saw it. Emi Martinez is Dibu.
Dibu.
Yeah, there you go. The confusion on your face is, Dibu Martinez. Can we put that in
I thought you were saying debut.
Can we put that in the bin? Dibu. D-I-B-U.
I thought it was like
I think it's his middle name in Argentinian.
I thought it was your Newcastle accent there.
Some Geordie slang
Some
there.
Geordie slang,
No,
yeah.
so I think it's his middle name or something like that, but no one's ever heard it before. And he made it single-handedly his mission for everyone to know that this player should now be called as Dibu, referred to.
That reminds me of a journalist, I can't remember his name now, used to refer to Ronaldinho as Ronaldinho Gaucho or something. And just the whole kind of...
Very hipster.
Very hipster, yeah. We don't like that, do we?
Moving on then, Mason Mount scored the opening goal. Like I say, Sunderland started all right, but there was kind of that release of pressure on the 8th minute when Mount took that goal brilliant, didn't he? Because he still had a lot to do when the ball came in the box. His touch was a little bit away from him, but he opened up the angle. And then to finish in the bottom right, he scored really, really well. Probably his best performance yet, do you think, since he joined United? It was his first goal in the Premier League, actually, at Old Trafford, which was interesting.
Yeah, it's waited a long time, didn't he? 2 and a bit years for that first Premier League goal at Old Trafford. Probably his best performance, yeah. I mean, there aren't many to choose from, to be honest, and that's no slight on Mason, because I'm a big fan of Mason Mount. I think he's a great player. We've seen that at Chelsea. He won the Champions League with Chelsea, and I think he provided the assist, didn't he, for Kai Havertz to score the winning goal in that final. So he's a player, and he's obviously played for England at the World Cups, at the World Cup rather. So he's got the experience and the quality. But yeah, I would say it was probably his best game for United. Of course, he came on against Lyon.
Yeah, and Bilbao as well. Did he score against in the semi-finals?
Bilbao scored 2, didn't he?
Yeah,
in the 4-1 win.
That was obviously a great performance, but I think
he came off the bench, but the game at the time was won by them.
Yeah,
but I think you're right from the start.
Probably was his best performance. When it was said, someone said it after in the mix, and I was thinking, was it? And the more I thought about it probably is his best display. Yeah.
But I mean, he got a standing ovation, which is fully deserved. And as you say, the goal he took so well. Someone posted an angler, I think, from the Sir Alex Ferguson stand high up. So you're looking down at Mbuemo when he crosses the ball. And the space, I think even Mount was probably surprised at the amount of space he had, because the defenders kind of stood off him. But he still, as you say, had to bring the ball down with his left foot, I think.
Yeah.
Wait for it and then hit it on the half volley. So it was brilliantly executed. And he didn't have a huge amount of time in which to do that. So you have to have a lot of technical skill and ability to be able to execute that move and produce such a clinical finish as he did, because there wasn't much room in terms of getting past the goalkeeper. So it was a huge goal. But I think it was more than that. I think, we talked about it, I think, on Saturday, the two of us. He was sort of first to the ball, wasn't he? That kind of forward, that high press. He really kind of put himself about. He was everywhere. And he brings the energy to the team that certain other players might not bring. And when he's fit, you just see his kind of enduring quality and his value, and why United were prepared to pay, I think it was 55 million for a player that was only had 1 year left on his contract. And a lot of eyebrows were raised then, because that seemed quite a high fee for a player with only a year left. But if he can stay fit, and that's the big if, because he's been plagued by injuries for the first 2 years of his time at United. I think he's only made about 17 starts in the Premier League.
It'll be something like that because of the muscle injuries.
Yeah, and listen, he's had a terrible time, and hopefully he's over that now. We spoke to him in America on the pre-season tour, and he's a really thoughtful guy. Didn't duck a question. Very honest, very forthright. Just talked about how the injuries had a huge effect on him mentally, and he really felt that now he turned a corner and he's tried everything to eradicate them. And I think he's now, is it 5 Premier League starts this season? I think it is. So he's clearly got into a kind of rhythm and a pattern where he feels he can train to the full, to the max, without breaking down. I think he missed the Manchester derby, didn't he? I think he was injured along with Cunha for that. But he seems to be available for selection, and on the basis of his performance against Sunderland, he has to start at Anfield a week on Sunday.
Yeah, so we spoke to him in the mix zone, a few of us. It was actually a lot more than normal because of the result. I think everyone went for, we'll take this chance to get down there and actually speak to someone before the international break. So it's probably around maybe 8 of us, I think, down in the mix zone, which, as you know yourself, it's usually maybe, 3 or 4.
It can be a bit of a bum fight, can't
to speak to Mount, yeah. But he was good, really good value, and he discussed being the press, and he actually used the word catalyst. He said, I see myself as the catalyst in that team. And he discussed his experience of playing in that system and why he thinks that's beneficial now under Amram. And someone asked, I think, about his relationship with Amram, because Amram has said that he loves Mason Mount.
Yeah.
And he said, look, I've got a really strong relationship with the manager, but probably not as strong as everyone else has got a strong relationship as well with the gaffer. But he clearly does get along well with Amram. I think we can all see that. Yeah. I mean, Amram defended them straight away when he came into the club, and he said he could see how much Mount wanted it. And I think that's a huge thing for me. I think obviously his injury record has been disappointing. There's been a few muscle injuries along the way, and he's missed more time on the pitch than everyone would have liked. But his personality and his character, you can see it when he plays, and he fights for every ball. He's aggressive, he's tenacious. Sometimes it boils over, but I don't mind that because he plays on the edge.
Yeah.
It's a really good addition, that kind of character to the dressing room, because every team needs those personalities, especially United side.
Yeah, and every manager that he's played for has raved about him. You go back to when he was at Derby under Frank Lampard. He was on loan there, was he? On loan possibly?
The great season.
The great season there. Lampard, obviously Tuchel at Chelsea. I mean, Erik ten Hag referenced when he bought him. Erik ten Hag referenced watching Mount play when he was on loan at Vitesse Arnhem, and Ten Hag was manager at Ajax.
Although we'll not give Erik ten Hag any credit because he wanted them to play as a number 8 and number 6.
That's true. Yeah. But I mean, but the point being, every manager that has ever worked with Mason Mount has raved about him. A bit like Luke Shaw. Despite all the injury problems he's had, every manager has wanted him, and when he's fit, has been in his first choice 11. So Ten Hag said the same thing, and Ruben has said the same thing. He loves them. He loves his energy. I think Mount was the first player, if I remember rightly, that Ruben met when he took over. There was a video released of Amorim arriving at the training ground.
Well, it would have been November international break.
November 11th, I think it was.
Yeah.
And he was the first player, and of course Mason was then coming back from injury, as has been a recurring theme, unfortunately for him. And I remember there was footage of them meeting for the first. He was the first player he met in the gym when he had that tour of Carrington. But he has that infectious kind of energy and positivity, and on the pitch, he'll run through a brick wall. He will do everything, and he will not chase down lost causes. And as a manager, that's what you want. So I think he brings a lot of technical ability as well, but a lot of energy. A huge work ethic, and as you say, he's not afraid to get stuck in. So I think he offers something that United have been lacking in recent seasons, really. But obviously he's not been fit, so he's not been able to showcase his talents. But now he's fit. I think he's a huge addition to the squad, and I think he just brings a different dimension to the way United play in terms of that aggression and that being on the front foot rather than being in a kind of passive way, which we've seen United be so often in the last season or two.
Clench your fist there. Really felt
Did I?
the passion for Mason Mount. Yeah.
Well, I do. I think he's a good guy as well. He's a good guy, and he's had a torrid time with injuries, and I think no one likes to see any player suffering with injury, particularly one who's supposedly, I think he's 26 now.
Yeah.
Well, he's meant to be in the prime of his career, and he's had 2 years at arguably the biggest club in the world and the move of his career, if you like. I know a lot of Chelsea fans won't thank me for saying that, but he's had those 2 years robbed, taken away from him by injury. So I think we only wish the best for him going forward.
Yep, it's completely a second that. We'll have just a little break then for half-time, a little ad break. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to the Manchester is Red podcast. I want to talk about the second goal in a little bit more depth as well, David, because there was a bit of a contrast between Mount's goal and then Sesko's goal, because Mount rounding off an 18-pass sequence was the most passes before a goal for any game for 2 years, league game for 2 years. So
stat,
it was a really well-worked goal from United. And then the second goal, this is why there's such a contrast. I mean, you observed straight away when Ruben Amorim came out, he's wearing a full tracksuit. We laughed. It was very Tony Pulis-esque.
He was just missing the cap.
And that goal, I mean, Pulis would have been proud of it. Diego Dalot, long throw into the box. Okay, there was a bit of fortune there for the flick on because it was actually a Sunderland player, I think, who got the flick on, wasn't it? But Sesko finished well, flicked in at the Stretford end. The direct approach really worked, and obviously it got that goal, and we almost saw another chance shortly after that when Dalot launched a long throw into the box again. And I think it was the first time, and I asked a few viewers around us in the press box because I can't recall seeing towels around the side of the pitch.
Yeah.
I think it was the first time that they have added towels around the pitch to allow the players to have more grip on those throw-ins. It worked a treat. It was responsible for the goal. Dalot had a poor game. He some really bad touches, but he was effective from that scenario. So it was funny, wasn't it, to see the contrast between those two goals. But there's no right way to play football, and you've got to do everything you can to gain an advantage. Yeah,
on the tracksuit, I'm kind of regretting not asking Ruben at the end of the press conference whether it was his lucky tracksuit and whether we're going to see it again at Anfield.
I prefer, this top I'm wearing Paul Smith. I wear a lot of Paul Smith, and I think obviously United is sponsored by Paul Smith. He often wears Paul Smith, doesn't he, down on the touchline?
Yeah, he does.
That's what he wears, and I presume the tracksuit was Adidas, wasn't it? I think
it was a club
more
tracksuit.
Relaxed approach.
Yeah, it was. But yeah, tracksuit aside.
Fashion experts, Steven McDonnell and Steven Railston here at the start of the second part.
But fashion advice aside to Ruben. It was Pulis-esque, that goal. He would have approved of it. But I think you have to play to your strengths, don't you? And with Sesko leading the line, all 6'4" of him, you've got to play to his strengths, whether that's long throws, direct long goal kicks rather from Lomans, which we saw a lot of on Saturday. It's a different approach, a more direct approach, a more rudimentary approach. But ultimately, if it's successful, then utilise it. We've seen Manchester City do a bit of that as well this season. Not moving completely away from the passing game and building out from the back, but certainly launching the ball long when they feel it's appropriate, when they feel there's an advantage to be had. So I think we're going to see more of that with Lomans trying to pick out Sesko. We saw it with Bayern, didn't we, in the Chelsea game? In the move that led to the penalty, to the sending off of Robert Sanchez, the keeper. Bayern did launch the ball, long ball. Sesko flicked it on, and already before Sesko flicked it on, and Mbeumo was on the move. So we're going to see a lot of that. Whether it's Bayern in goal, I think obviously, as we say, it'll be Lomans, until otherwise. But it's an approach that works and plays to the strengths. And of course, Sesko, that's his skill set. Being physical with defenders, using his physicality and his height and his strength to muscle them off the ball and win the ball, and using his height to do that. So if you can do that and win the second balls, that's a huge advantage to have, and one that I think we're going to see United employ a lot more this season going forward.
I've seen a little bit of criticism for that approach on social media, and again, take everything for a pinch of salt because you can't read what idiots say on social media, but Amorim's been heavily criticised, and rightly so, for being so stubborn and refusing to change the system. But then he makes a tweak and is more direct against Sunderland. And then he's criticised for making a tweak and changing his approach and how they actually approach the game itself within that system. You can't have it both ways. You've got to actually praise him for that. And I think since Pep Guardiola's introduction to the Premier League, it has become fashionable all the way down the football pyramid to build up from the back. I actually really enjoy that style of football. Others think it's boring and it's too tactical, etc. If I was to be a sporting director, I'd want my team to play that way. But it's not the perfect way to play football. It's not the right way to play football. You can play and get results however you want to play. And it was refreshing actually to see that from United. I can't really recall Lomans going short once really. He would have inevitably. But most of the time when he got the ball, he got his head up and he picked out Sesko. His passing was actually really good because he picked them out each time. Yeah. And if you've got a big lad up front, it's common sense, isn't it? I know it sounds very Brexit football and we're sitting there like old folks saying, just get it up to the big lad. But there's an element of, it's effective, it works.
Yeah, it reminds me of that Brian Clough quote, the famous Brian Clough quote where he said, if God had wanted us to play football in the air, he put grass in the sky. But sometimes you play to your strengths. You've got to. And I've seen Manchester City score a lot of goals, the aerial route. I mean, particularly with Ederson, his distribution.
Arsenal exploit that so much.
Was unbelievable.
They're a team of giants, aren't they? I mean, it's not just about your approach play and build up. I mean, the Premier League's become even more physical in the last couple of years with the height of these players. Their kind of ability to win duels and to win the second balls. It's really interesting when you look at clips from Sporting Lisbon, and I hadn't really properly looked into it until around 6 months ago because someone had brought it up and I read an interesting article. And a lot of Amram's build-up play was bypassing midfield. It was getting it up to Gyökeres. He'd win second balls. The wing-backs and the midfielders would kind of latch on and the build-up from there. Yeah. And we saw that against Sunderland. And it might not be the most attractive style of football, but if it secures results, Amram needs results.
Yeah, it's a results business.
Exactly.
And if it works and it's successful, then that buys him time. Because let's be honest about it. I don't know whether we'll come to this on this episode, but as welcome as that win was, he's not out of the woods yet, Ruben. Let's be honest.
Let's discuss that now then, David.
Yeah, I mean, it is results. I mean, that's what he needs. He needs results. Yes, he needs quality performance, but really at the moment, he needs results. And I did something with BBC Radio Manchester just prior to the game, and we were talking about the systems and all this sort of stuff. And I was saying, you don't forget that if Manchester United win today, all this pressure's on Amram. And a lot of people are saying, I think the morning of the game, there was a lot of talk about how the mood had changed amongst the hierarchy of the club, that they were starting to doubt, whether Ruben was the right man, whether he had the confidence of the players. And then after that win, suddenly the stories are, he's got the backing of the players now. But on Saturday morning, I made the point that if they win here, they could be as high as 8th, 7th or 8th. I think they're 10th now.
Yeah.
But they're still only 6 points off the top. So it's been such a congested concertinaed league this season with everybody losing. I think Palace were the last side to go unbeaten, weren't they? They lost at the weekend. One win can propel you up the table, and suddenly Europe isn't such a fanciful option or a notion rather. I think he needs results, but the league table is a lot more palatable to Manchester United fans and to the hierarchy and to Ruben. It looks a lot better for them. But you're only as good as your last result, so you've got to build on this. And of course, Liverpool even though they've lost the last 3 and they're in crisis, as it were, they're going to be like the proverbial wounded animal. They're going to come out fighting against their fiercest rivals a week on Sunday. So you can't take anything for granted there. But if you're going to play Liverpool, the best time to play them is probably on the back of 3 defeats, when a lot of questions have been asked about Mo Salah, the formation. Florian Wirtz hasn't settled. I know we're straying off the point here, but I think that for Ruben, he knows. I mean, I asked him the question after the Sunderland game. I said, how frustrating is it that you've now got an international break when ordinarily after a win like this, you'd want to build on that momentum? And he laughed and he said, this team has no momentum. He was brutally honest about it. I think that's the problem. So the key now is to build on that and try and get this elusive, back-to-back wins in the league, which is astonishing stat still, that he's not managed to do that in almost a year in charge. But he's not out of the woods yet. I will say that because as loath as the hierarchy are to change the manager, if results don't improve and there's no consistency, we saw it with Chelsea win, Brentford defeat, the win against Sunderland. Is the pattern going to repeat itself against Liverpool? If that happens, questions will be asked again. He'll be back under pressure. So he knows that. He's not naive. He knows he's got to go on a winning run now, or at least don't lose at Liverpool, or put in a creditable performance. And then I think is it Brighton after that, and then Forest.
Brighton at home, Forest away, Tottenham at home, international break.
Listen, I'm not belittling those teams at all, but those are games that United could and should be winning as well.
I mean, that's why I wanted to get my kind of analysis after Brentford kind of balanced and strike the right tone. Just the way the table is at the moment. And look, a win against Sunderland isn't exactly going to save them, or it's newly promoted opposition. Okay, they've made a good start this season, but they're expected to win at home against Sunderland. But I felt they'd win that game. You go into the international break, and obviously you've got Liverpool, which initially looked pretty ominous, but now it all of a sudden looks like a massive opportunity, especially with the way they played against Sunderland. And I did an article about this 2 days ago, where it feels like he's now got the blueprint to get a result at Liverpool. Yeah. When you listen to on Slot and interviews, he really dislikes when teams don't play into their hands, when they might play a long ball, when they might really try to use long throw-ins or set pieces. He wants a team like Southampton last season where they'll play flowery football, they'll have a lot of possession, but Liverpool will kill them 5-0. And he'll come out after the game and say, well, Russell Martin, he's a brilliant manager. I think he's got a fantastic future.
Damn him with faint praise.
Yeah, exactly. And it's condescending, really. Yeah. You want to get in their face and you want to make it a game. And think back to United's last win at Anfield, 2016, Van Gaal, 1-0, Rooney. Very scrappy game. I was looking at the stats of that the other day and watching some replays. Obviously, a really, really scrappy game. But United got the win, got over the line. To secure a first win at Anfield for almost 9 years, you're not going to outplay Liverpool, the Premier League champions, at Anfield at home in Merseyside. They're going to have to play scrappy. They're going to have to play direct. And I think that performance against Sunderland really shows United how they can get a result against Liverpool in a week and a half time. I know we'll do a preview podcast. And then it's Brighton, then it's Forest and Tottenham. And those games, Liverpool aside, aren't too intimidating, I don't think.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. But
it's funny how football changes, isn't it? I mean, you get a win under your belt, you got the win behind your sails, but as you've said, the crucial point, as we keep saying, they can't win back-to-back Premier League games, and that needs to change. If he wants to keep his job, that needs to change. Yeah.
Now, as I say, ordinarily you would think achieving that task away at Anfield would be the hardest task of all, but there is a vulnerability about Liverpool at the moment. Again, that, as I said just now, you've agreed that can work both ways. It can make them ultimately extremely dangerous to play, or you can capitalise and think, look, these guys are not here for the taking, because no one's going to be that naive. But we can go here and take the game to them and try and get a result here. But you're right, Steve. You're going to need players like Sesko to be at his belligerent best and trying to put Van Dijk off his stride and be physical and get in his face. You're going to need Mount to be buzzing around the pitch, and Buemo as well. I think Mount will probably start ahead of Cunha.
Lomans will have to have a very good game.
Lomans will have the cop on his back. Yeah. They will seize upon every opportunity to let him, give him a hostile introduction to the fiercest rivalry in English football. You're going to need Casemiro to keep his head. You're going to need Casemiro, which I know is easier said than done, but you're going to need him to cut out any reckless, stupid, needless challenges that are going to get him a booking and then leave him playing on the edge. You're going to need Fernandes to keep his head. I mean, I remember the 7-0 defeat there a few seasons ago where he got an awful lot of stick, and there were some suggestions that he'd asked to come off, and
which was a load of tosh.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he got an unfair amount of abuse then, Bruno. A lot of criticism from former players who should know better. People saying that he should never captain Manchester United again, that kind of stuff. But in the context of the game, he's going to have to keep his emotions in check, because we know he's a very emotional player. He sort of plays on the edge of his emotions all the time. He's going to have to keep that in check, and you're going to need your defence to really step up as well. I mean, I know Mo Salah's not had the greatest season so far, and people are questioning his work ethic and his contribution, and maybe as his time comes to an end, as you say, one season too long at Liverpool. But you're going to need, as you say, everyone to scrap and fight. And I mean, Amram used a very unfortunate phrase post Sunderland, but he said, I want my players to think I'm going to kill myself in every transition. I know what he means that. He means basically, I'm going to die for this team. I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to lay down my life for this team, give it everything I've got. And that's got to be the mentality. I mean, I know it was a clumsy way of him expressing it in his second language, or not his native language, but I know what he meant by that. He meant players have got to give everything for this team. And never is that more so the case than away at Anfield for a Manchester United player.
I was keeping an eye at the Stretford end at the start of the game, because they've done a lot of good work with getting the banners and the flags out, and it really looks good before a match. It helps atmosphere. Does. I think the players will appreciate it as well. And I was trying to look for the Amrin banner, which was raised before the Burnley game, before the September international break, that said he'll turn the Reds around, reference to the Bonnie Tyler chant, obviously. I couldn't spot it, which was interesting. Maybe my eyes were crap and maybe it was up there.
There's a lot of banners there, aren't there?
Yeah, but I did have a good look, or maybe it was just left at home. So he didn't really get the warmest applause as he left the dressing room before the game. There was a little kind of smattering of it eventually, and he kind of reciprocated it. But at the end of the match, obviously 2-0 on course to secure a much needed victory, his name was sung. There was strong support from at the end of the game, and he obviously received a warm applause afterwards. I think speaking to fans, especially after Brentford, I think everyone's kind of split at the moment on, I think it's fair to say, about Amram's future, because everyone has reservations about his system, about his selection decisions, and ultimately results and the failure to win back-to-back league games. But it's funny, isn't it? As I said, one win, and all of a sudden it shifts towards kind of giving them more time again. And I think Sky Sports had done a poll, and I can't remember the precise numbers, but I think it was around 70% believe he should be given more time and 30% believe he shouldn't. If you asked that after Brentford, it probably would have shifted the other way. But what we will say is a decision on a manager's future can't be made on a game-by-game basis or on emotion. It has to be made on a lot of evidence in a series of results. Because if you're making a decision on one game, like United did after the FA Cup final with Erik ten Hag, you're likely to be making that decision for the wrong reasons, aren't you?
Yeah. And I think that's why the message from the United hierarchy is we want to give him as much time as possible. You know, we knew this was a long-term project. Ruben knew it was a long-term project. We're not going to judge him on the basis of 7 league games into his first full season. We're going to take a broader view, a longer-term view, and assess, further down the line, if you like. So I think he has that time on his side, not a huge amount of time, because if he were to lose heavily at Liverpool and then not win against Brighton and then maybe lose against Forest or not win there, given their struggles under Postecoglou, he would be back under pressure. So he knows, I keep coming back to this, he knows that he's under pressure. He knows that he's never going to be rid of that pressure. It's always going to be hanging over him. But it's a question of, do we see progress? Now, we saw some progress on Saturday. No question we saw progress. I mean, I've been fairly critical of the lack of progress under Ruben, but there was progress. Maybe it has taken a bit of time for Sesko to kind of find his stride and settle into English football and what's demanded and what's asked of him. Mount made a difference. So these things, they're subtle things, small things, but when they're put together, they can really lift a team. But only time will tell. We have to wait and see whether he can develop that consistency of performance and result that enables him to stay long term. But certainly he's as I say, you'll know this, he's not out of the woods yet.
And one thing I will say on the Mount decision actually to start, and which we didn't mention before, it was a brave decision because Matthias Cunha, he's yet to score, but I think his overall performances have, for me, been very good.
Yeah.
A big decision to then play Mount in that role, but it was vindicated immediately. So fair play to Mount for that. I'm going to go back on my words because I'm aware on the last podcast I said I don't want to be talking about Kobbie Mainoo on every single podcast, but I'm going to talk about Kobbie Mainoo.
You're contractually obliged to mention Kobbie.
Yeah, I'm actually getting some money on the side going where you talk about the situation, don't worry, I'll get the next round in.
Yeah.
Look, he was an unused substitute in the first 2 games, then substitute appearances in every other Premier League game, but potentially we could get to Halloween, which is in a few weeks' time, and Mainoo hasn't started a Premier League game. I think we'd be very surprised if he starts against Liverpool.
Yeah.
And then depending on how that game goes, will he start against Brighton? Probably not. The situation doesn't look like it's improving at the moment. There is still time, of course, for it to turn around, but all the indicators suggest that situation is not going to change. And I mean, again, we've made this point on multiple podcasts now, but if situation doesn't change, it will be revisited in January. Having said that, from a United perspective, although Mainoo might want to leave again, why would they allow that? Because if they get an injury in the midfield department, they need cover. It's a sticky, tricky situation.
Yeah, and I can see it being revisited, as you say, Steve, in January, because he's not getting the game time he wanted. So that his position has not changed at all. He's still on the bench. He's still not starting Premier League games. It's a difficult one because the games aren't there for Manchester United, for Ruben Amorim to rotate his squad. He has 1 game a week. 1 Premier League game a week. There's no FA Cup till January. They're out the League Cup. There's no European football.
Joshua Zirkzee. Has anyone seen Joshua Zirkzee?
No. I mean, there's a story overnight that he's not happy, and I think that's pretty obvious. He's not happy, and that he'll probably look to move in January because unless you're a mercenary, I wouldn't put either of those young players into that category.
Like ourselves,
of course. Who see the pound signs before anything else, before ambition or anything else. Unless you're a mercenary, then you're going to want to play, and if you're not playing at the club you're at, you're going to want to move to a club where you'll be appreciated, where you can get regular game time. So I can totally understand why Kobbie Mainoo wants to leave on loan. I can totally understand why Joshua Zirkzee wants to go. I can also totally understand why Manchester United have refused to let either go, because it's not, and we've said this in previous podcasts, it's not the biggest squad. And for that reason we've just said, because they don't need a big squad, because they haven't got the games, required, to necessitate a big squad. So I can understand why Kobbie wants to go. Amarim's messaged him, and we haven't heard much about it in the last couple of weeks, because I think people are sort of not growing tired of Kobbie's situation, but there's a realisation that it's not going to change. But Amarim's message to him has been, you're fighting with Bruno Fernandes for that spot. Casemiro is my number one choice as the kind of holding midfielder, the defensive midfielder. Bruno's the other central midfielder. It's your job to prove me otherwise. Now, we both said that we maybe felt that Bruno might have been left out of the starting lineup for Sunderland because he hasn't had the best of starts of the season, and that may open the door for Kobbie. That didn't transpire. So he's got a job in his hands, and as you said, I cannot see it changing anytime soon. We're at the start of October, we're in the middle of an international break. There aren't enough games for Kobbie to stake his claim, and I don't see that situation changing unless there's an injury to a midfielder. Similar story for Manuel Ugarte. I don't think Amarim trusts him at all, and he'll only get a game. I mean, I thought it was bizarre that Ugarte started ahead of Mainoo at Brentford. I thought Mainoo deserved the chance to start because Casemiro. I know what you're going to say, because Bruno and Kobbie are both sort of offensive-minded players, but I just still felt that there's enough, defensive cover there, or enough defensive diligence there between the two of them to warrant starting them.
I completely agree, especially when you want to control the game. It
Exactly.
makes more sense to put Mainoo in and actually control the match against Brentford, where we saw the midfield was a problem again. And,
Exactly.
And you got to give the ball away a lot again. Although Amarim has said they are competing for that position, I agree. Mainoo should have started at the G-Tech 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think he would have looked at that and thought, if I can't start when Casemiro's suspended and Ugarte's not pulling up any trees, if I can't start this game, this manager has no faith in me. Now, Ruben might say, he might publicly say, I love Kobbie, I think he's a wonderful player. And maybe this is a bit of tough love, but it's tough love, to the nth degree, because he's just not getting a look in at all. And I don't see, for a young player, I can understand the argument that says you've got to fight for your place at Manchester United. You've got to show the requisite mentality, fight, call it what you will, to win your place. Don't give up. Don't throw your toys out the pram and seek a move elsewhere. Roll up your sleeves and try and win your place back. I get that. But equally, if a manager is so reluctant and so sort of stubborn in terms of not picking you, you can train as well as you can all week, and you're not going to get into his plans. So I can understand the desire to go elsewhere, particularly, and we've said this before, in a World Cup year, because he's not in the current England squad. Don't think he was in the last England squad. As long as this situation goes on, Mainoo isn't going to be picked by Thomas Tuchel and will not be going to the World Cup in America next year, as it stands.
Yeah, I was told last month that the World Cup is a huge motivator for him. Of course it would be, naturally, because he played in the Euro 2024 final, and then the potential to not be on that plane to America and Mexico, to miss out 2 years later, would be very disappointing. It would almost kind of hit home that regression, which he's trying to fight at the moment at United by training well and get back in the team, but it's just not happening, unfortunately, for him. Yeah. We'll leave it there then, David. What's your plans for this weekend? It feels like a Thursday or a Friday to me, because I'm off on
international
Friday. We're recording this episode smack bang middle in the week, aren't we? It's a Wednesday afternoon, but anything exciting planned for this weekend?
My sister-in-law's 50th birthday.
I said anything exciting.
My sister-in-law's birthday. Is that not good enough for you?
That's not good enough. That doesn't make the cut.
No, my youngest daughter's football on Saturday morning. Oh, I've got a 60th on Friday as well. It sounds like I've got a really busy social life. I haven't. This is just all kind of happening in the same weekend. Yeah, my daughter plays for Stockport Vikings, so I'll be on the touchline.
Which position does she play?
She's a winger, but it's 7-a-side, so it's a bit tricky. She's kind of an offensive player. But I was at training last night. She's got 5 goals, so it doesn't get it from me, the talent, obviously. But I'll be watching her Saturday morning, and then Bristol for my sister-in-law's birthday, and then back up Sunday, and then back at it, and then the build-up for Liverpool on the Monday.
For Anfield.
And yourself, any plans for the weekend?
Going to the rugby on Friday night. I would never usually go to the rugby, but it's Sale are playing Newcastle Red Bulls, as they've now been rebranded as. My friend's got season tickets at Sale, so going across there. And as I said before, we came off, I'm playing golf as well. But for listeners who do play golf, David is a very good golfer. He might be humble about his ability, but he is. And I'm not quite up to that level yet, so we'll have to wait until we get around.
Well, I haven't played for a while, so it would be a level playing field, I think.
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. Thanks for your time as usual.
Cheers, Steve.
And thanks to listeners. Have a good weekend. I'm aware we're recording this on Wednesday, but you might be listening to it a bit later in the week. Enjoy yourself, and we'll be back on Monday. Take care.